Good afternoon. I appreciate the group going before us. We're motorsports fans ourselves, so I think with this case that helped us take a forward-looking approach, not only quantitatively, but qualitatively. I'm Brandon. Prior to Kellogg, I was at the NFL and the NFL Players Association. Elesh was at BCG. Tabassum was at Porsche. So with this case, we took a three-phase approach to understand NASCAR's sales and marketing timeline and how we can enhance it and using strategies to do so. That first approach was diagnostic. Who are our customers based on their behaviors, and what are our races based on who attends and the behaviors of those customers who attend. Secondly, what are the gaps in our marketing timeline? How can we make the marketing timeline more efficient? Who are our exact customers? How do we attract them? But also, how do we retain our existing customers and prioritize our ideal customers? And then third, we took action. Steve Phelps, in his presentation yesterday, talked about a lot of this coincidentally, but one is AI-driven personalization. The second, destination marketing. And third, influencer strategy. So with that, I'll have Elesh talk about it a little bit more.
Thanks, Brandon. So I think starting with the diagnosis phase, let's get a broader understanding of what that sales timeline looks like right now. There's really three big spikes for sales. First is that post-race, people buying their tickets right after for next year. There's the renewal deadline spike around 34 weeks out. On the left-hand side, you see the last second sales spike, the crux of the problem why we're all here today. I think, obviously, we can see that that's a year-round sales and marketing process, but the part that we want to call out is that 1 to 6 month gap where you see a lot of the gray right there. There's a big lull in sales, and that gives the opportunity. How can we smooth demand in probably one of two ways? Fill in empty seats, or take that spike at the end, or in this case, it looks like the beginning, and move it over to the gray so it smooths demand and sales. But this is a pretty high-level graph, so what we're going to do is understand who are those customers and what races are driving this sort of behavior. So it's look like a complicated slide right here. We took a pretty basic segmentation approach right here, but I think it gives us a few core key insights. So on the matrix on the left-hand side that you see right there, or the right-hand side that you see right there, are two variables breaking down our customers. First, when do they actually purchase? Less than 1 month out, 1 to 9 months out, 9+ months out from the day of the race, and the average ticket price of the race. So let's take that top left box, the why not attendees. That's the persona we call them. They're your last-second impulse purchases. Why not? Might as well go to the race. I got a free weekend right now. They make up 4% of total revenue for NASCAR for the year, ticket revenue, and 12% of quantity. They're around 43 years old on average, travel about 200 miles to go to the race, and probably use the internet to purchase their tickets. Let's go to the exact opposite corner, that super fan, who's purchasing that race 9+ months out, spending $1,000 on average a ticket. They make up 5% of revenue, higher than the why not attendees, but only make up 0.7% of ticket quantity. They're older fans who prioritize the premium experience. They want to be there. They're traveling more to get there, and they're using their phone to make that purchase. And I'm not going to go through every single box. That could be the entire presentation right there. But I think there's really three big insights we look at this. If you add at the top row, 40% of purchases are making up only 15% of total revenue. And then on the flip side, the bottom row, 2% of purchases make up 20% of revenue. The opportunity here is clear. It's how can we move that top row more closer towards the bottom? How do we get more value from our customers? Second, at a broader level, channels vary from customer to customer. We have to look at channel strategy, channel optimization. We'll talk about personalization later. Meet the customer where they're at. And lastly, we see a correlation between lower ticket prices and distance being traveled. Your lower tickets are more of your local fans. How can we encourage them to travel to new places, spend more, and at the end of the day, increase their customer lifetime value? But the same way we classify customers, we can also classify races. Again, we'll do 3 broad classifications of races. First are your marquee races. These are made up of customers who are renewing far in advance. So think of Daytona 500, Phoenix Fall, which is the championship race, Watkins Glen in the summer. Second, you have your novelty races. I call them destination races. I think novelty is a better term right here. That's Chicago or LA Clash. You got customers who are purchasing more last second. Ticket sales also release later, but they're purchasing the higher value tickets. And let's classify everything else for the sake of today's argument is that these are all other races. They're relatively made up either lower purchasing tickets on average or last second purchases. So the worst of both worlds from the first two. These make up a lot of your races, about 7% of ticket sales, 50% of revenue. And these are the area we want to focus on. How can you move these regular races towards the marquee races where it's renewable-driven, or make it more exciting where even if people are purchasing at the last second, they're purchasing high-value tickets and are encouraged to purchase high-value tickets. Kind of saying this in a different way, we can look at the average kind of the purchase rate based on kind of time period out. Marquee races, 70% of races tickets are sold in the first 2 quarters, so 3 to 4 quarters out, so like in the first 2 quarters of the year. Your novelty destination races are more last-second purchases, but they're kind of actively in their last 2 quarters. And the regular races, which have extremely varied sales. So looking at that first column where quarters out, you got 20% of purchases being made like 9 to 12 months out, another 50% being made in the last couple months. These are really varied, and again, kind of driving the point again back home, it's how do you smoothen that demand variability, especially for those regular races which are not the Daytonas or the Chicago or the Clashes. Kind of taking a step back, we talked a lot of numbers in those last 3 slides. I think it really kind of boils down to these 3 questions when we look at what NASCAR can do from a sales marketing standpoint, and really drive value across the funnel from awareness to loyalty. Kind of first, how do we bring in new NASCAR fans into the experience, into the funnel? Kind of especially we talked about younger fans earlier. Kind of bring them into the fold. Second, kind of the big timeline question: how do we make existing fans purchase earlier? And then kind of really make that use that 0 to 6 month window. There's a lull in sales and get them to start purchasing earlier. And lastly, the broader question, those loyal fans, how might we increase their size and share of wallet and get those higher value customers throughout the entire marketing timeline? Kind of to answer those 3 questions, we offer three potential solutions that Tabassum will talk about.
Thank you. So before I dive into some of the marketing and strategy tactics that we've come up with, I'd love to just quickly go over the layout of the slide here. So on the left-hand side, we'll see the research and insights that we've gained from either the data provided to us or outside resources. And then on the right-hand side are really some action items that NASCAR can take moving forward to tackle some of those issues that we were searching in the case. That being said, we're excited to present 3 strategy and marketing tactics that NASCAR can consider to drive increased loyalty, increased awareness, and more excitement for year-round racing, in addition to funneling those new fans in, as well as solidifying that existing fan base that currently exists. We're in an increasingly personalized and digital world, and consumers need more to feel and stay connected to the brand. After a deep dive into the data we were provided with, we found that despite having a few email campaigns, NASCAR can improve the sophistication of customer segmentation significantly. Our earlier matrix really demonstrates the need for personalized communication for fans, both new and old, and marketing is often not a one-size-fits-all approach. But how does a sport as big as NASCAR really cater to the needs of each persona that we highlighted earlier? With the support of digital tools, we feel like NASCAR can leverage AI to make personalized communication not just possible, but easier. After reviewing some of NASCAR's email campaigns, specifically for the Talladega race, it seems like messaging segmentation was also only sliced 3 ways: race announcements, renewal/season tickets, and general emails. The campaigns unfortunately lack the content, cadence, and creativity that fans are looking for in brands, which results in a disconnect between fans and the general outreach that NASCAR is currently practicing. And we think there's opportunity to do more, to share more content with fans, and to really talk to the fan in a more personalized manner. Here on the right-hand side, we have a couple ideas on how NASCAR can personalize communications specifically based on the fan persona, which NASCAR can further identify with customer data analysis. Messages need to be tailored to specific consumer behavior in order for fans to feel like the sport is a sport specifically for them and not just a sport for anybody. Motorsport is not your everyday sport, and NASCAR is no exception. Now, what can personalized communication really look like? For example, new NASCAR fan named Lindsay has attended 2 races in the past, and there's now one being held in her very own hometown. These are small but important details NASCAR can leverage to take personalization one step further, and by taking this small step, fans will feel more connected to the NASCAR brand and inclined to engage with the sport on a more consistent basis. In addition to personalized communication, I think many of us in the room appreciate the chance to travel and explore new cities. This is actually my first time in Boston, so I know I'm a big appreciator of traveling. And I think one of the unique aspects of motorsport is that almost every race is an opportunity to be a travel experience. Brooks, you mentioned earlier today that races are almost like festivals, and we really think that NASCAR can spread that festival energy into new places, which brings us to our next tactic, destination-focused marketing. By focusing on destination marketing, we think NASCAR can transform from a sport you watch to an experience that you live. Steve Phelps mentioned yesterday that NASCAR's global expansion strategy is underway in places like Mexico, Canada, Brazil, and even Europe, which I think are beautiful steps in the right direction. But let's start by addressing a significant challenge that NASCAR faces today: meaningfully expanding the fan base. I say meaningfully because deep down, this isn't really about monetary ticket sales or driving the number of fans for specific races, although those are great achievements and great metrics to keep track of. More than anything, we want to create an authentic fan base that truly follows the journey of your exciting drivers with every race for years and years, and not just one-off races that our friends are going to. But these long journeys often require an initial seed to be planted, and we think that seed could be destination-focused marketing. Our research indicates that the location of races, especially those perceived as remote, can negatively affect the sport's ability to attract new spectators. We feel like there's a lot of untapped potential for NASCAR as a catalyst for tourism through destination-focused events, and we'd like to offer two strategic approaches under this tactic. First, we can tap into new destinations, such as some of the cities we have illustrated on the slide. By partnering with travel destination cities, NASCAR can replicate some of the success we've seen in other cities, such as Chicago and Los Angeles. These locations have been proven to be successful models in reaching new fans, demonstrating the need for strategic location selection. Street circuits are also not everyone's cup of tea, and I think racing purists know this, but I'd love to see NASCAR really meet the middle ground between exciting city destinations and that technical racing that a lot of the fans really love about this sport. Our second approach under this tactic is for NASCAR to enhance its promotion of existing destinations. There's an opportunity to market these events as a getaway for even the casual fan. It's not just about the race anymore, it's really about the entire weekend experience. It's the thrill of the engines, the camaraderie among the fans, and the overall spectacle of the race and the city that's hosting it. And we can slowly see regular races shift over to those marquee or destination races that so many people love, further boosting fan engagement. NASCAR used to be the top spectator sport in 2012, but it's unfortunately no longer the case. But we think it's time for NASCAR to get back to the top, and we can do this by creating memorable events that fans genuinely want to come to and make it an intention to come to, lessening the amount of those last-minute impulse purchases that we've seen in the data. What was once just a race day or sporting event can now become a weekend destination for new families and friend groups, and we think once this seed is planted, we're confident it can grow into a loyal fan base. Moving on to our third and final tactic here, social media is the modern-day pit stop. I'm guilty of it multiple times a day, sometimes for more than 30 minutes at a time, and as a motorsport fan myself who is deeply embedded in the automotive industry, both personally and professionally, NASCAR content is not as popular as it can be. And if it's not even in my algorithm, I can't imagine how little to no visibility my friends and family and other prospective fans have on the sport. I was really happy to see NASCAR rolling out its Netflix series, Full Speed, which has received positive reviews, and I think can serve as a consistent touchpoint for influencers in the future. But we think NASCAR can take it up a notch, ironically on a more granular level, to boost fan engagement across the social media spectrum. For even non-Netflix users, leveraging influencers in social media marketing, which have the power to completely transform brands. Talented personalities like Olivia Dunn, Taylor Swift, and other influencers and celebrities have clearly demonstrated that the success of coming from overlapping fan bases and driving that powerful engagement. And in addition to that, to make things a little easier, some of the best racers these days are actually influencers. Our drivers are no longer just drivers. They're philanthropists, they're role models, they're activists, they're memes, they're fashion icons. Let's start leveraging the power of these multifaceted people to really spread the sport. Our strategy here is for NASCAR to create engaging bite-sized posts that allow new and existing fans to get hyped for the races and all of the epic moments that make NASCAR such an exciting sport. Picture your feed filled with sneak peeks of race day, Kyle Larson spilling the tea on his race week routine, Eric Jones's hot takes on the tracks, or an Ask Me Anything series on Reddit from Danny Suarez. It's about making sure when someone's scrolling, they're seeing NASCAR and they're wanting to stop scrolling on their feed. Here on the slide, we actually have a sketch of future Ferrari driver Lewis Hamilton and Denny Hamlin having a chat about their respective sports after a car swap. That's the content that's going to make someone say, okay, I've got to check this out. And this is content where earlier in the conference, Dave Alpern had mentioned how sponsorships can further bloom. This is the kind of content that can also serve as edutainment that works for everyone involved. So think of fans, the sport, sponsorships, etc. Everybody wins. We also don't think NASCAR needs to drive solo here for this marketing strategy. If NASCAR teams up with other sports, other big guns in the world of motorsports, such as Formula One and IndyCar, we can play up these partnerships and draft off of each other's fan energy. It's like when two great drivers team up, the race becomes a lot more exciting. Shifting into last year here, NASCAR is doing a lot of things right. When we look at the current state, there's a solid product, there's uncertainty, the adrenaline. Echoing Steve Phelps yesterday, there are more passes in a single NASCAR race than an entire F1 season. The excitement is palpable, but we genuinely think the excitement and adrenaline can be enhanced by shifting some focus to our road ahead, where NASCAR's strategy and marketing engines are elevated. Our 3 tactics have the fuel to enhance fan engagement and ultimately drive earlier ticket sales. And the brand can give people their own NASCAR story to follow, a driver to cheer for, and a community to be a part of. Again, the intention here is not simply selling tickets. We think NASCAR needs to take a step back and create that meaningful and authentic fan base it deserves, and ultimately drive that fan engagement and revenue all year long. Our finish line is really to see NASCAR becoming one of the top 5 sports leagues in the US. It is ambitious, but with a strategy as dialed in as the drivers on race day, we feel like NASCAR can really lead the pack here. On behalf of the Kellogg drivers, thank you for the opportunity to share our ideas. Before we see you at the finish line, we'd love to open the floor to questions.
Another great presentation, appreciate it. I caught at least 13 race punts, so don't think you got those past me. Just a couple questions on the data. I mean, I saw in Seattle, New Orleans, wasn't sure if that was placed there with anything from a data perspective or just external analysis that you did. I'll start there.
So some of those cities are just highly ranked as travel destination cities, and they have raceways that are actually close to the city. And so the fact that there's existing infrastructure close to the cities, we think it's even more incentive for NASCAR to host races there because of the existing infrastructure, coupled with the fact that they are higher ranked travel destination cities in the US. So we really think it's incentive enough for NASCAR to start pushing out races in cities like that.
Again, echoing Brooks here, it's great. You guys did a great job with your research, looking into our marketing through Talladega. You certainly looked through, you know, some of our key metrics, average ticket price. You guys did a great job there. I wrote down 2 questions here. One was, did you reference that when you see a higher spend, that would relate to further distance traveled to get to the race? Did I hear that?
I would say it's correlated in the sense that, like, let's think about it this way. It's like, we'll use like Daytona 500 as an example, where people were like, hey, Daytona's an iconic race. I'm a race diehard. I want to get that premium experience at Daytona no matter where I live. If I live in Texas, I want to go see a race. I want to see Daytona. I'm going to go there. I think that's where you see the correlation, that people who are willing to spend a lot of money on those races are also the ones people are willing to travel to those races for the races they want to see.
So in the same vein there, kind of with the question to you, and then I'll really ask you a question. You're saying that, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but the later they purchase, the fan purchases, you are seeing that they are spending more if they're purchasing closer to the event?
Let me, to make sure I'm giving the exact numbers, I'm not saying something that's inaccurate. We'll work our way back. Yeah, so if you look at that 9+ month column, I know that's probably tiny font size for you right there. So that's the most rightmost column where they use the budget enthusiast planner and superfan. They're traveling, especially for your more premium kind of seats, they're traveling more than like that first column where like you're less than 1 month. When it comes to the lowest kind of price segment, the less $100 segment, you don't see as much variation. I think most of those people are looking for is that deal, that buy, especially in their local areas. It really kind of gets pronounced for the premium and like the mid-tier kind of service offerings, that farther out purchases are generally the people are traveling more to the races.
Yeah, so this is good. We somewhat categorize our fans here. So then my question is would you think there are 3 matrix like this for a marquee race, a destination race, and a regular race? Did you guys see the differences in your Daytona 500s versus your Daytona 500s or your championship race versus a Richmond race or a Martinsville race?
Exactly. And I think the way I would look at it, because the way we classify those races are based on kind of where they fell in those segments. So Daytona 500, they're extremely renewal driven. I wouldn't say there's one specific box. They kind of go across the entire column with that 9+ month. When you look at your destination-based races, they're almost your second row and your third row. It's like, and the bottom left parts are early purchases, higher value purchases. Then when you have those regular races, the majority of them actually were first column, first row. So either last second purchases or lower value purchases, and not that much in kind of your higher value late ticket purchases. And that's the way actually we classified those races, by the customers that were coming to, or the fans that were coming to those races. If that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely stole a little bit my thunder, because I love this slide, and then it sounded like you kind of heat mapped how these segments changed by your race classification. Yeah. So then you could see the different clusters, and that's how you kind of determined your groupings. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I think they're probably you can do like some k-means clustering, make it a lot more analytical in a way, but we think this kind of 80-20 method got us to the insights that are still relevant for NASCAR.
Did you, going in, did you have like a benchmark of like what you would expect to see, like for a generic, like going in and then oh, this is kind of red flagged, you know, or is it just kind of like bespoke to now, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
No, I think that's a fair question. Yeah. And I would say it's more of the latter, where kind of like there's clear differences that are happening with auto racing kind of being a very specific segment in the US. Like, we don't want to use comparatives to NFL or NBA or MLB just because they're completely the way they work, the way purchase behavior works. Fans aren't traveling 400 miles, 500 miles to go see an NBA game. Most fans aren't. NASCAR's really common that happens. So we don't want to do that. I think there were just some clear cuts, like that first bullet point where 40% of your ticket quantity makes up only 15% of revenue. On the flip side, 2% of ticket quantity makes up 20% of revenue. There's definitely long tails you see in other industries. I think for us, like that was a bit more extreme than we saw in NASCAR.
Out of the three tactics that you guys had, curious if you guys think there's one that'll lean more into bringing new fans in, or is it sort of across the board, all three will be about the equal?
Yeah, I think, well, we have different opinions on this. So I'll start with my opinion on this one. In terms of new fans, I think the influencer-based strategy is by far the one that attracts most. And I think about, especially people who are Gen Z, Gen Alpha generation, the way they do things is through hype. If their friends are doing it, I go to sporting events because my friends are going to sporting events, or it's the cool thing to do. If I see my favorite influencer doing that, maybe that's a thing. And I think F1's been doing that really, really well beyond just the races and the Drive to Survive. It's like you have this ecosystem of influencers that are driving even more fans within F1. But I know you guys have also other opinions on this one.
Yeah, no, I think you can see it in all three. You talk about influencer-based strategy. Michael Jordan's the owner. He sold the Charlotte Hornets. Now he's at more races. He has 2 drivers in the playoffs. That attracts new fans. That attracts Michael Jordan fans, right? And I think you see that with the NFL, the Taylor Swift effect. And then 2, destination. We're Kellogg, we're in Chicago. We were at the pouring range racetrack last year at the Chicago Street Race, and it was fantastic though. And you see that as well, having destinations. I think the data actually said 5% of people hadn't visited Chicago before. So it's a travel destination, to Boston's point earlier about New Orleans or Seattle, these top destinations. And then lastly, Steve talked about it on his panel yesterday, but AI-driven personalization, right? The pass in Atlanta, 3-car finish, like you should be promoting that. People should have personalization. And then I think somebody else, I forgot her name, on the panel as well, said representation matters. So now if I see a black driver like Bubba Wallace, that might get more diversity to your racetrack. If I see a 3-car finish or something else that I think is relatable to me and is a little bit more personable, I can be a ticket buyer and also enter that ecosystem.
I am a firm believer that Reddit is the future, and I think it's a place where a lot of companies should lean in. Reddit is a place where people speak so passionately, and I have some soft data on this, that there's 3.6 million fans in the Formula One subreddit, and there's only 1 million in the NASCAR subreddit. And I know that only is kind of a funny word because that is a large number, but when you compare it to other motorsport series, I think NASCAR has a really big opportunity to lean in there. And there's 10 posts every day in the NASCAR subreddit compared to 10 every hour on the Formula One subreddit. And I think getting some traction in the NASCAR subreddit, I think, can go a long way. And they're very low stake, low effort ways of doing that, such as like an Ask Me Anything series. People get to hear directly from Danny Suarez about his amazing races. And I think it's such a great way to get in touch with the fans and have some more touch points between the fans and the drivers. Thank you.
We can answer one more, yeah.
I heard AI used a few times. Yeah. Did you do any modeling?
No, we did not do any kind of like more intense model. I think I would, if I had to take the segmentation strategy, it would be do a more like actual kind of probably a clustering-based modeling for that one. AI, the context for us is, I think, for personalization as like a broader term, especially with NASCAR's loyalty program. There's a CDP kind of getting more and more fleshed out from a data platform standpoint. It gives you opportunity from a content perspective or a marketing perspective to actually leverage that. Obviously, we don't have every single email where you can like build off like these are what a perfect email would look like. But to the point that Tabasum mentioned earlier, it's if you're a Lindsay who lives in Chicago, has been to 2 races before, went with the group, send her a text, and she's like 27, 28, where her phone's her main way of communicating, sending her a text that, hey, babe, bring your friends out to this race because we know that you like going with your friends, and it's in your backyard now. That gives you opportunity from a pure marketing standpoint.
And AI did me those cool pictures.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Dolly, right there.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.